Hi, everyone. Welcome to another podcast, Momentum Podcast. I'm your host for today, Moya Mamora. And today I'd like to share with you foundations of wealth creation. So think about this as wealth creation 101. And I'd like to start out sharing out from personal stories and personal examples, and also things that I've learned over time. So I remember many years ago, probably 20 years ago, thereabout, actually a little bit more than 20 years ago, I read a book, started getting into things around money, finances, investing, and so on and so forth. And it really dawned on me that a lot of people don't know much about money because I realized that I knew very little, if anything, about money. And I think that that's the story for a lot of people, right? Where the information and the thinking that we have about money today is just information that we assimilated from our environment. So no one really, or very few people actually, have gone through a very structured learning program to help them with shaping their thinking around money and what their relationship with money ought to be, and how they can also create wealth and leave legacy once they're gone for their family. So I'd be sharing from my personal example. And by the way, the first lesson, right, is for you to self reflect and think about when you hear money, what ideas come to your mind. See, because what I've seen over time from interacting with different people across different economic classes is for people who are at a higher economic class, there's a way that they're thinking, right? And for those who are at a lower economic class, there's a way that they're thinking. And the way the rich and wealthy think, for the most part, tends to be consistent across board. So, in any environment where you have a society, you'd always have the haves and the have nots. And those that have a mindset. There's the way they think, there's the way they relate with money, there's a way they process money, so on and so forth. Those that don't have, there's a relationship that they have with money, there's a way they think about money, so on and so forth. So, you ought to ask yourself the question, when you hear money, when you hear wealth, what ideas come to your mind? What reactions, what feelings actually come to your mind? You see, because if you have the mindset of money being for spending, meaning it's just a way for me to get the next thing that I want, believe me, anytime you do get money, you're going to be looking to spend it on something else that you do want. If you think about money as just for buying things or going on vacations and things of that nature, every dollar that comes into your possession, you're directing it towards something like that that would be pleasurable for you. Some people think that money changes you, right? So it's like, well, I don't want money because I like how I am right now, but when you get money, it actually changes you. Well, not really. Money doesn't change you. Money really just amplifies who you are. So if you're a bad person, the money you get will really give you the ability to be badder, if I can use that word. If you're a good, conscientious, generous person, the money that you get gives you the ability to really magnify those attributes about yourself. So if you have this mindset that money changes people and I don't really want to be changed, then it makes sense that you probably would be making decisions that repel money as well. Or people have, depending on where you are in the world, there are some people actually that have this mindset that if you attain to a certain amount of wealth, then you probably had to have done something shady. Now, that thinking is actually very destructive, right? Because if that's the mindset that you have, it's very unlikely that you will be able to create true and lasting wealth. Or you might actually find yourself tempted to do something that's shady because you think and that's your belief that limits you in terms of how you can get wealth. So you might be tempted to do something because you feel like that's really the only way I can actually create wealth and get some money into my hands. And that's not helpful for anyone, including yourself in society. So it's important for you to assess these belief systems and to assess what your thoughts are and really just try to peek into your own inner chatter, your own soul, and find out how you're thinking. You see, because these thoughts that you have begin to shape your worldview, they shape your actions, your decision making, and they actually get you to where you are. So for me, my journey has been about 20 plus years, and I'm where I'm at right now because of the things that I had learned, how my mind had changed, and the decisions that I had made over time. Sometimes I regret not doing things differently. I wish the things I know right now, I wish I knew them 20 years ago. My life would be materially different. I can tell you that for sure. But that's all good, right? It's all part of the journey, right? And that's why I'm here to share these nuggets with you. So if you're young me, Moyo 20 years ago, 30 years ago, you really want to be listening to these things and internalizing them, right? Because the future that you envision, the future that you desire, the decisions that you make today ultimately determine the outcome of that future. Well, very first step is assess your beliefs about money, right? So correcting some of those things. Money actually is a tool. Money is not finite. Money grows. There is abundance everywhere. And what I mean by that is if you think about the US GDP, for example, right, which is the total gross output everyone who's contributing to the US economy is contributing, right? It's measured in dollars and it's in the multiples of trillions and it's been growing this way for the last few years, right? And it's because it's measured in US dollars, it's not fixed. It's not like, oh, it was 100 trillion today. And so therefore, it always have to like blocks. No, it goes from it is right now. Next year, it's growing by like 3%, and it just keeps growing every single year. And that tells you that there's abundance everywhere. That for as long as there are humans, there's potential on the inside of us, and the ability to create wealth is really dependent on our ability to tap into that potential that's on the inside of us and be contributing members of the society that we are ultimately in. Money is a means to an end. Money is a tool by which we can be a blessing onto other people. It's a tool by which we can be helpful. We can cause others to flourish, right? Um, can be used to purchase assets. Would come to me to the extent that I'm providing value and contributing in society. So these are some of the thoughts that you want to get into your head and get into your mind. And the people who are in the top class of society, they probably have a relationship that I don't have. They know what to do with opportunity first of all, they know how to recognize opportunity when it presents, and they know how to maximize and take advantage of that opportunity when it presents. They think differently about money. And these are the types of things that I want you to start thinking and reflecting on. So start feeding your mind, start feeding your soul, start feeding your spirit with the right information about money. Don't just assimilate information around you, right? Because a lot of the stuff that we have around us is junk. And if you're just eating everything uh, around you, that's ultimately what you're going to produce. So that's who you are going to become. Versus like you're curating the information that's coming into you. You're trying to understand what are the principles around money about wealth creation. Now, I've been talking about money and wealth creation. I actually didn't quite define what I mean when I'm talking about wealth creation. So we're talking about like ideas here. So think about this as wealth creation 101. So wealth is not just the accumulation of funds or money, right? So you might see a person who's making 3 or 4 times as much as you. If they're spending 20% more than they make, they might be rich, cash rich, making $1 million, but if their expenses are 1.11, they're not doing good at all. So you should never feel inferior because of just your paycheck. Your mindset is the most important thing. If you can fix that, that person who's spending more than they earn has the wrong mindset. They just got fortunate where they got a skill and they're being paid for a job that is paying them nicely, but they don't have any wealth. Like that tap shuts off and that job is gone. They are destitute effectively, right? I mean, of course, they can always go find another job or whatever, right? But if that pattern doesn't change in terms of how they're spending, they're not going to end up in a good place. So when I'm talking about wealth, it's to the extent that your infrastructure that generates cash, right? Uh, Passive for that matter. So meaning that I'm not going out working. I don't have to like working to ensure that that infrastructure is generating cash. So true wealth, the ability to build that type of infrastructure that is able to produce money such that the money it's producing is in excess of how much I'm spending. So my cash generation exceeds my cash burn. That's the whole idea. And when I have the systems and the infrastructure in place to generate that cash, then I can actually see that I'm truly wealthy. And that's how you ought to be thinking about yourself and thinking about your life. So when we talk about Wealth 101 and we correct the mindset, you now have to start asking yourself, what do I need to know such that I can start generating cash passively and ensure that my cash burn is always below my cash generation. Now, depending on what state of life you're in, your cash generation, your job might be an important part of that cash generating infrastructure. But the thing is this, every one of us wants to retire. I don't think there's anyone here who's like, man, I want to work for that employer for the next 50 years. That's exactly what I want to do. You might want to do that. That employer might actually not want you to do that, right? Um, the point here is this, is that if you've generated something, so maybe for like the first 20 years, right? You might be working 30 years, you might be working, that's okay. But you've created a system and an infrastructure behind you such that if your employer tells you, hey, great job, appreciate everything you've done for us in the last 30 years, you're not bitter. You're like, oh, yeah, well, I appreciate everything you've done for me in the last 30 years as well. And you're good and you walk away. That's something you have to think about. And that's one idea around wealth. The other thing that I would say that's important is it's the optionality that you having wealth gives you, right? So it's not just about getting all you can and sitting on the can. It's the idea that I want to have freedom with my time to live a life that God has called me to live, a life that I was created to live. I was designed and put here on earth to live, which is about the pursuit of that calling on the inside of me of purpose, which is really what impact is all about, right? And that wealth generation is important for that. So once I also accumulate cash, it's not just so that I can satisfy my own family and the people that I live around or that I quote unquote deeply care about, right? But I'm also thinking about broadening that community to others, right? Because the idea here is that I want to be a blessing unto others. I am blessed so that I can be a blessing unto others, that God is working something in and through me such that it would be a blessing unto many others. That's really the Abrahamic blessing. That's the Abrahamic ideal. That's the call that we have upon our lives ultimately, is that in our contribution, in our productivity, in the resources that we're earning and generating, we can use that to make an impact positively in the lives of those that are around us. That's what I mean by wealth. And then it's not just only about money. Of course, I understand that there are other intangibles that are associated with it as well, whether that's like your mental well being, your whole total well being, favor, good health, relationships, and so on and so forth. All of those things tap into the spiritual, intangible dimension of what it means for a person to be truly wealthy. All right, so that's a pretty long preamble. So, every person that's watching this video or listening to this, there are four things that you have to know and understand about money, right? So, we've talked about the mindset, we've defined what wealth is all about, right? Once you fixing your mindset and feeding your mindset such that you are creating wealth is a lifelong journey. So it never stops. It's not like, yep, I got the mindset right now. So this is all the things that I have to do. But it's a lifelong process of continuous learning. I'm always learning, how can I be better? How can I be more productive? How can I be more disciplined? How can I be more discerning in terms of how I allocate funds for investments and things like that? So all of these different things prime me so that I can recognize opportunity when opportunity presents itself in front of me. So a poor person, I heard this acronym, is someone who's consistently passing over opportunities repeatedly, POOR. But you can't see what you haven't been primed for because you really don't see with your eyes, you see with your mind. So if your mind isn't primed to recognize opportunity and to act on opportunity, it could be standing right in front of you and you're not going to even recognize that it's there or know what to do with it. So that's why it's important for us to continually feed our minds, feed our spirits and our thinking so that when we do see opportunity for wealth creation, we're able to take advantage of those opportunities and actually do something meaningful with it and do something well with it. So, four things everyone ought to know about money. Number one is, how do you attract money? Number two is, how do you manage money? Number three is, how do you grow or multiply the money? And the fourth thing is, how do you give money? So let's talk about the very first thing. How do you attract money? One of the models that we are all too familiar with is how you exchange your time, your capabilities for money at your job, right? So you're in an organization, you're given a task for a fixed amount of time because of your capabilities, whether that's intellectual and whether that's creative, whether that's physical, but you're contributing what it is that you have to that organization per time, and they're compensating you for that contribution. That's effectively a job. It is the most common way people are able to generate income, generate cash, or attract money to themselves. What's important about this, and I want everyone to hear this, is sometimes I meet people and they make it seem like the job is the problem. Not really, right? Anyone at any level doing any job can actually create wealth. Remember, it starts with the mindset, it starts with the heart conditioning, it starts with how you think about money, what your relationship is with money. So it's not the actual job in itself, but you do need to know these four things. Attracting money, if you are functioning with that job model, it means that number one, you have to show up. That's like the very first thing. Like a lot of people don't understand here is that you have to show up. That's the first thing. Just show up. Up before everyone else. Show up more than anyone else. Just show up. That is one of the ways that you continue to secure that stream of money coming your way and coming to your direction. Show up. Number one, show up. Number two is you have to do the assigned task and do it well. Do the assigned task that's been assigned to you and do it well. I see a lot of people, they're given a job, show up like don't really want to be there. They do a very shoddy job with the task. It's like, thank God it's Friday. Oh, it's 4:45. I'm supposed to be out at 5, but who's gonna know? By the time I make it down into the lobby, it's going to be 5 o'clock. So then I'm done. That mindset is not going to take you far. But what you want to do is you want to show up, you want to do the task well, you want to do it in full, you want to go above and beyond. And then the next thing here is you can then start figuring out ways to solve all the people's problems within that organization. Start asking yourself, how else can I be a valuable team member? How else can I contribute, right? Now I've done my job. Is there a way that I can do other people's jobs? One of the things that I hate so much is, oh, they don't pay me enough to do this. Oh, it doesn't make sense to do my job and to do someone else's job. That is just like shallow thinking. They don't pay you enough to do that. They pay you, man. Like, just think about that. Like, you have to shift your mindset from this, I'm just like a resource that's dispensable, to I'm actually an asset to be a part of this organization. So, yeah, don't pay me enough to do this. But part of me doing that job is I'm exercising myself. I am training my potential. I'm cultivating my ability to be productive and to contribute. They may not recognize it, but believe me, once I refine that ability, it has more value. They may not see it, but somebody else is going to see it and somebody else is going to be willing to pay me something for it. And that's how you ought to think, because the more problems you solve, the more money you attract to yourself. Anyways, I feel like I've stretched that, and I can go in depth in a separate conversation about just excelling at work. But that's the job model. Another model that's related where you're exchanging your time for money is maybe you're a solopreneur, you're a self-employed person. So you have a skill, you have an ability, people want to pay you for that. You already recognize that. But rather than doing this in the context of an organization, you're doing it yourself to a market. Customers are out there. So now you have to then sell yourself into that market. Similar situation here is you stop working, you stop selling, then the income stops. It dries up, right? So you got to keep working. You got to keep showing up as well as a self-employed person, but you're selling yourself into a market. Another model for how you attract money is the business ownership. Now, think about what it is as a self-employed person. You were the accountant, you were the salesperson, the customer service agent, you were the bookkeeper, you're the one who was delivering the service, you're the one who was delivering the product, and so on and so forth. But when you're operating a business, what you're trying to do is you're trying to build a system. You're trying to organize people to do all of these different things. So now you got a person who's customer service. You have someone who's doing accounting, finance, and bookkeeping. You have another person who's doing the manufacturing of the product, or who's doing the delivery of the product. So you have a supply chain person. You have another person who's handling sales. You have another person who's doing operational work, right? Making sure everything's lining up nicely. And you organize all these people, you share what your value system is, you put the goal in front of them, you incentivize them, and you motivate them to do the things that you as an individual were doing all by yourself before. Now you have flexibility. Now you're getting other people's time who are contributing value, you're packaging all of that, and then you're selling it in a market. You're the glue that holds everything together. It does require some time from you, but the difference is I don't have to be there 80 hours every single week to make sure the wheels are turning, right? Maybe I'm there 10, 20 hours a week and the rest is functioning nicely, right? So that's a way to generate and attract cash to yourself as well. Now, you can also buy a business, right? That's something else that I've seen people do, right? You buy a business, a way to do all of that. So all the systems are set up in place. And then what your responsibility is in this situation is making sure that everything is working as it should be working. You're casting a vision. You're providing strategic direction for the organization. You're putting a picture. You're leading the people towards a goal, towards a desired end that you see. And that's a fantastic place to be at as well. It's a way to also attract money to yourself. And then another way to do that is to invest money. So you have the money actually work for you. So you take the money, you invest it in something that then an asset that's also generating cash and it's returning to you. So these are all different models for how you can attract money to yourself. So everyone needs to know how to do that. So depending on what context that you're in, you have to be there long enough to be an expert in what it is that you're doing, whatever model it is. It requires time, it requires knowledge, it requires discipline, it ultimately requires skill. And skill, when I think about skill and wisdom or knowledge, and you combine all these things together, think about it as an artist who's skilled at their craft. It takes time of refining. It takes time of like the little details that help something or come out and present itself that way. That's what attracting money to is like. It takes time. It takes discipline. It takes studying, right? You become this craft person where you understand the nuances of what it is that you're doing. You understand how to bend this. You understand how the matter is going to respond to you, how the medium is going to respond to you, how the environment is going to respond to you, because you've spent time studying, applying yourself, failing, redoing it all over again, and just keeping at it consistently. See, there are many people who start businesses and in the first 5 years, when many businesses fail, and a lot of people don't even make it through 5 years. I don't necessarily think it's because the businesses just fail. I just don't think people actually apply themselves long enough at one thing such that it continues. I think that for many people, that's the missing link. It's that they quit way too early. They say this isn't working, not seeing the results that they want, and they just tap out and they're like, you know what? But it requires time, it requires attention, it requires discipline, it requires showing up, it requires consistency, and it ultimately is about developing your skill in that particular area of focus. So the second thing here is everyone needs to know how to manage money. Now, what do I mean by manage money here? So to manage money is to be able to keep account of what's happening and to be able to direct, right? So if I use the analogy of going on a trip, right? Say I wanted to go to New York, right? And I had to plan my trip to New York. I need to understand if I'm driving, what's the route going to be like? What's the best time to set out? What activities do I need to start applying myself that would help me with getting me towards my goal? And then monitoring those activities and asking myself the question, am I on track? Am I actually going up northeast from where I'm at right now? Or am I going south and going west? Because that's taking me away from what my stated goal is. So I actually do need a goal, right? As well. That's part of managing as well. So if you think about what it means to be able to manage money and such, I can have what it takes to create wealth. I have to have a goal. What's my goal? What are my financial goals? What are my wealth creation goals? What does my wealth creation equation look like? Do I know what that is? Do I really understand how much it takes for me to survive a month? Do I know what it takes for me to go through a year? The potential events that happen in my life over the next 5 years, 10 years, 15, 20 years look like? Maybe you got kids. Those kids are going to grow up and then they're also going to go to college. Have you started thinking about that? It might not be a priority for you right now, but guess what? That day is coming and it would come so fast. And you'd be like, oh my, you grew fast, fast. No, that dude took or girl took 14, 15, 16 years to grow. That was 16 years of you watching and you having to make a decision that you didn't make. You pushing a decision aside because you thought you still had time, because you weren't thinking about it right now. And because you didn't have the right mindset around it, you didn't make the right decisions and take the right steps or actions around it. So that's what managing money is about. So I understand my situation right now. I understand my situation in the next few years. I understand my situation in the next 10, 15, 20 years. So, what are the resources that are coming in? What am I doing to attract money? How do these incoming resources map out to where it is that I'm ultimately trying to get to? If I evaluate my life over a period of time or at a point in time, what does my financial health look like? Do the liabilities and the assets that I have, do they help me with getting to that particular destination? Am I assessing my progress towards that consistently? Am I organizing my life and my situation around that particular goal? Remember what I said about wealth creation. It is that you're trying to create a system, an infrastructure such that that's generating cash in surplus or in excess of what my cash burn is, or what my expense situation looks like. Are you tracking that? Are you monitoring that? Are you saying to yourself that I actually have the infrastructure to generate cash? And maybe you understand your goals and you're saying to yourself that, well, the only infrastructure that I have right now is my job. But that's not something that would be sustainable forever, because that just keeps you going right now. Some people tell me when I meet them, they're like, oh, like, well, um, you know, make a lot of money. Like, what should I do? I'm like, well, get another job. Like, personally, well, and a lot of people don't realize this, and a lot of people don't know this. When I was on campus, I worked at Burger King in the university campus. I worked in the back. I did well. I then became a cash register guy, sitting like taking people's orders. Like, that was a promotion. If in a situation where I needed extra cash right now, I don't know, I'd go deliver pizzas, I'd do Grubhub, I would go work security at night somewhere. I'd find something else to do, right? Such that it can generate income. Or I'd find, what am I really good at? I don't know. Like, what would pay me money for? I'd find that and I go sell it to them. But the point I'm trying to make is that you have to be consistently thinking about this infrastructure and how you're able to generate cash and assess whether that's in excess of how much cash burn you have. But also, part of management is also you taking stock of your current state and saying, do I really need this car? Do I really need this house? Do I really need this watch? Do I need all these shoes and purses? Can I sell them? Can I get a little bit more money by selling these clothes that I haven't worn in the last year and a half? They're in my closet. Maybe I can sell some of them. Like, just like going and saying, do I really need that subscription? I have like 5 television, like streaming subscriptions. I really need all 5 of them. Maybe I just need one. Maybe I need none. Maybe people, you should just not watch TV anymore. Maybe what you need is to be take some of those subscriptions, go get like an Audible and get 2 books every month, 2 audiobooks every month, and listen to those, versus like binge watching your favorite TV show or some TV show that you saw on social media or you heard someone talking about, right? But the care is that you also have to assess those. Do I have to eat out? Do I have to buy that cup of coffee outside? Do I have to buy that lunch, from that restaurant, right? That's like $18 or $20 for lunch every single day. These are all the things that you have to look at and say, where can I cut down on such that I'm having a surplus, right? And it's that surplus, right? And I'm throwing out a random number, 30%, right? 30%, or you're spending 30% below your after-tax dollars is what you should all aim for. And then say, If I'm earning 5,000 after tax, I don't want to be spending anything more than 3,500 in expenses. Now, the additional the excess 1,500, it then moves us to the next thing. How do I grow that piece of it? How do I multiply that piece? And that's where investing comes into play. Okay. So you start surplus and then you start investing. Now, I've been doing this long enough, and I've heard, I've heard things like, oh well, um, you know, risk, you get ready to lose it all, that invest. I mean, what's the definition of risk? Risk is it is the fact that the outcome expected would deviate or may deviate, right? Or the that you get may deviate from the outcome that's expected. The degree to which that deviation is big is risk. So if you're doing something where the outcomes may vary this wide, that's very risky. If you're doing something where the outcome may vary just this much, that's not risky, not too risky at all, right? Because with a degree of certainty that if I'm trying to get stay in straight path, it's not going to vary too much. But if I'm trying to stay in between this, where this is a negative and this is a positive, that's a wide range, and a lot of things can happen in that range. What we need to understand is that there are investment vehicles that are out there that have very predictable outcomes. It may vary, it may swing, but those swings are fairly predictable for the last 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 decades plus. So when you're investing in something, for example, that could potentially have a wide outcome like that, then you get careful. You have to then limit how much money you're putting into things like that, because that detracts from your ability to actually grow and multiply the money, because you can only grow and multiply money that you have. But if the money actually goes away, disappears, then there's nothing to grow and multiply. And I have several stories I can tell you. Several stories, right? Because I've tried it all. I remember back then, I was like, man, I got super excited and I wanted to invest. So I put some money in pride. What's so funny is like you start about these things and then you have all these ads, penny stock millionaires and all these people. And in my naivety, I for a subscription invested maybe like $5,000 in like penny stock. I was going to like 10x. They have these sensational headlines or something crazy like that. Well, that I lost all my money. That $5,000 went down to about $500, right? And it was a waste. So get rich quick is not a real thing. Steady, stable investments over time that you can predict. For example, take the S&P 500. The S&P 500 is 500 in the US. It's a portfolio over the last 3 decades or so. I think it's returned about 8+% compounded annually. That's fairly predictable. Now, did it have some years where it did 20%? Yes. Did it have some years where it did negative 20%? Yes. But on average, over time, it's roughly about 8%. Like that's like that's you can calculate. You can take a spreadsheet and you can say, today I put money in S&P 500 ETFs times 8% every year. That I can take to the bank. So this is not like oh, you'll be ready to lose everything. That's not true, because also when you're invested in something like the S&P 500, it's really a bet on America. You're saying America, has for a long time. I expect it to be around consistently because I expect the economy to continue to grow, right? That's bet that you're ultimately making, right? So that's not like oh, if I have my money, then you're expecting the entire nation to implode, which is not going to happen, right? It's not going to happen. Or take real estate, for example, as an investment. Generally, we track with inflation consistently over centuries, right? Sometimes even fast and more accelerated, depending on what area you might be in. But those are like very sure, and those are very surefire ways to actually grow and multiply the funds that you have. Another way is also to invest it in a business, right? As a way to invest and as a way to grow it, right? So if you took that money and you invested it in yourself, you learned a new skill, right? Or you refined a skill that you have. that's an investment in yourself, because then you can take that and you can go put that on the market, right? Or you can your business, and you have some things and you're like, you know what, there's this one thing that I really need that would be with bridging the gap on XYZ. You can invest it in that, and that's an investment. And that by definition is what an investment is that I'm sacrificing something now. I'm putting money into this thing right now with the anticipation that it's going to produce something for me, right? I remember there was a story, not a story, this is a real life story. This is my personal experience. Um, there was a stock. You know what? Let me check how much that stock is right now. There was a stock that about 5 years ago, it was trading at $5. Um, and again, whole idea of wanting to get rich quick or wanting to just like make a lot of money overnight, you should get that out of your mind. It's actually like a very good thing. So I bought options in this stock. I probably spent easy $30,000-$40,000 buying long-term options. It's how much I believed in this, but I was like, you know, if it hits, man, you know, a grand, and I'm like, I multiplied that by like 100. That's $3 million right there. I'm like, you know, that stock currently trades right now at $177. So if I had just done the same thing, predictable thing, just buy the stock, right? Because believed in the thesis, great things happening out there. That stock, so $5 to 177, that's about 35 times my money. 35 times. I put this 30 grand in options, expired worthless. If I put this 30 grand in the stock, and in anticipation of it in 100 times, right? But I got zero. But if I had put it in there, held it 5 years, I would have been up 35 times. 35 times. That money would be over $1 million today. Just let that sink in for a little bit. Over $1 million. But guess what? I ended up with nothing. So what I'm trying to tell you here is this. The knowledge of how to grow and multiply money, and I use the words multiply, and it's almost like, you know, appealing to something of great on the inside of us. But the truth is, it requires time. It requires discipline. It requires patience. It requires consistency. A lot of people aren't investing even the little surplus that they have today because they think it's meaningless. So for some of you, you got some excess, but all that money is going, but you're still thinking this mindset of, oh, I don't want to lose my money. I just like to look at my money in the bank account. If you're just looking at your money in the bank, you're losing money because inflation is eating up the purchasing power. On average, about 2.5% to 3% to 4% in the US every year. So you're losing about 3% annually in terms of purchasing power if it's just sitting in the bank. And some of you, you have a little but you're so scared. And the reason why you're so scared is because the information you have is a lot of information that is all about how do I get rich quick. And for all those people who try to get rich quick, there are many stories of people, of a lot of them losing money, but it doesn't stick. But there are people who very boring, not trying too hard, just doing the very most basic, simplest thing. And they just put the money, they stash it aside consistently. And over time, that money is growing. And these days, it's so easy. There are like apps out there. If you walked into your bank, I bet you there's somebody out there in your bank who would be able to give you counsel and advice. By the way, I'm not a financial advisor. I'm just sharing from my own personal experience and my own personal knowledge. I will encourage you all, certainly go sit down with your tax accountant just so that you can come up with a tax plan, but also sit down with, you know, your certified financial into your bank, get an app, use Chat GPT. I don't know. There are like way too many resources out there right now that can provide you the guidance on how you can, you know, very stable and funds the surplus that you have. And then the last thing I talked about that everyone needs to know how to do is how to give money away. Now, giving is a very, very powerful idea. There's deeply spiritual, but it's also deeply beneficial for us socially, emotionally as well. See, because what giving does is it taps into something that is deeply innate that connects us with who He is and the depth of who He has created us to be. I said something at the onset when we're talking about wealth, that it's not just about how much I can get and how much I can, and just like that for myself and my family, but how much can I be a blessing unto others? I love what the Bible tells us in Genesis chapter 12. It tells this story about God's call of Abraham, verses 1 to 3, where God calls Abraham and tells him that I will take you to a land that I would show you. I'd be the one to guide you. I'd be the one to lead you on this journey and on this path. And he says that I'll give you a great name. So the fame, the popularity, the clout, and all those things, God says, I'd be the one to give that over to you. He says that I would increase you, I would make you great, I would bless you. It says, if others bless you, they're also going to be blessed. If they stand against you, I'm going to stand against them as well. It says, you know what? I'm actually working out something in you such that all the nations, all the people around you will be blessed. And Paul, in when he's writing in Galatians chapter 3 and in other writings in the New Testament, he draws on that and makes a connection to the fact that for people who are in Christ Jesus, they're a part of that Abrahamic call. I think that's a powerful idea. And one of the things that we learn from that as you go through the scriptures and reflect on it, this idea that I can give, I can, one, honor God with the resources, right? So this principle of tithing, for example, what it does for me personally is that it breaks the grip, it breaks the idolatry of money. So now I don't have to look at money as my sense of security, as my cornerstone, as where I find comfort, right? I recognize that beyond the money that comes my way, that there is a God that stands behind that, who orders the affairs of life, who creates order in my space, who gives me the wisdom and the skill set for me to be productive. And so therefore, because I'm being productive, I'm able to attract money. So me taking a tenth of that and using that to honor this God is what that does for me. It breaks this thing about me looking to the money and saying, you know what, I don't want to give it because I might need it for XYZ. Oh, I worked for that. Oh, well, I did that. I was able to accumulate that. No, because I stay in a space that's ordered, and because I have the wisdom and the ability and I'm of sound mind to be able to do these things, I owe it unto Him. But beyond that, I'm also a partner with this God in the human project, in the human flourishing project. So there are people that are around me who don't have as much for whatever reason. Maybe they fell on hard, they've not been able to pull themselves back up. There was something catastrophic happening in their lives. But I can be a blessing even unto these people because I then become that channel through whom God wants to be a blessing unto others. So He might not be able to reach them directly, but He's got me. I can have compassion. And out of that compassion, I can then be one that can provide for them because I'm an agent of this God who's providing as well. And that then begins to trigger different spiritual things that happen, things that aren't necessarily immediately apparent, right, in this natural material world. But it wanted to actually see people smile. So there is an emotional, psychological benefit to that. But in addition to that, there are also promises of blessing. There are also promises of, God's favor, the light of the fact that He's endorsing the things that I'm working on, that He's looking over those things and protecting the things that I'm working on, protecting those that are around me. There are all these other intangibles that come along with that. So giving money is also an important part as well, right? So I then understand that selfishness has its deep roots in scarcity. And if I don't know how to give, I'm trapping myself in a mindset, in a mentality that is limiting. So I might be cash rich. I'm actually like spiritually broke, if I can put it that way. Right? But the point here is that money then doesn't become my God, it doesn't become my idol, but I can break free from that and actually use that to be a blessing unto others. Well, that's all I got for you. So just to recap real quickly, number one, fix your mindset around money because the way you think about money would affect your relationship with money and your decision making around money. So make sure you're learning, getting the right information, correcting limiting beliefs about money. Number 2 is the 4 things that you need to know about money. So 2A is how to attract money. 2B is how to manage money. Third thing is how to grow, multiply the money. And the last is how to give that money out. Hopefully you've enjoyed this. Hopefully you've learned something. So this is Wealth Creation 101 Foundations of Wealth Creation. If you found this to be helpful, I would encourage you to subscribe and share this with someone else and leave a comment just so I know what you're thinking. And thank you all. This is Momentum with Moyo Mamora. Till next time. Bye.